All right, what's up, everybody? Mark here. It's been a while since I put up a video. Uh, I've been in the hospital for the last week and had a little cancer scare. They found a lump under my lungs and size of a tennis ball, so they wasn't sure what it was. So they kept me in the hospital for like a week. But they didn't know if it was cancer. They didn't know if it was malignant. They just didn't know. So did the biopsy. The results came back. I'm all right. Okay. I have walking pneumonia and high fever and a walking pneumonia. And the pneumonia, as a result of the intensity of the pneumonia, the severity of the pneumonia, I ended up having what's called an infectious growth. So they gave me these pills, and I'm taking all these antibiotics now. And like I said, the good news is it's not cancer. It's not nothing life threatening. I was scared to death. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was nervous. Right, those 4 or 5 days I was in the hospital. I was little, what I'm saying? I lost mad weight. As you can see, I lost like 15, 20 pounds. Couldn't eat for like 2 weeks. It's just real tough. Had a health scare. So, but nonetheless, I'm back and back up to my old tricks again. So this book right here, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I don't want to say I read this book because to say I read this book would be uh, admitting a falsity. I didn't read this book. I would say I raped it. I raped this book. I would say I assaulted this book. I mentally and intellectually assailed this book. I scrutinized meticulously this book. I examined. I studiously searched this book, and I'm still studying it till today. Right, and what I got behind me right here is it has nothing to do with this book per se, but it does. Right, this is what's called Coulomb's Law. Right, I don't know if you can make it out, if you can see it. It's called Coulomb's Law, and Coulomb's Law pretty much it's a law that it quantifies the magnitude of the interactive force that exists between two objects. I'll say it again. Coulomb's law is a law that quantifies or describes the magnitude, which is the strength of the interactive force that exists between two charged objects. And I've been studying that stuff like for the past, I would say, 3 or 4 days, right? Yeah, about 2 or 3 days, because I just got out the hospital. What's today? Well, I got out the hospital last week, Thursday, and I started studying this like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I've been studying this for like the last 3 or 4 days, Coulomb's Law, and very interesting stuff, very very fascinating stuff, and how I tie it into this book. By the way, my email is mcole252@aol.com. Again, it's mcole252@aol.com. I want to start a book. I want to do like a book club, whether we do something online or whether we decide to meet somewhere in the city or downtown Brooklyn or wherever. Somewhere we agree up on a convenient location where we can all meet up and have discussions on this book. This book in particular, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Like I said, next to the Bible, I think this is the best book ever written. The Bible is number one. I think this is number two. But it's an amazing book, and I'd like to start a book club. We could do something online, or we can again pick a designated area where we all meet up. So my email is mcole252@aol.com. And for those of you who are wondering why do I still use AOL, because it works. Okay, it's that simple. It works no different than Gmail or any other email. So email me and email me your contact and let me know if you'd like to get this book. We'll give you guys probably like a month, 30 days to read the book, and then we'll meet up again at a designated or as a convenient location, and we discuss this book. Right? We kind of pick each other's brain and extract as much as we can from the jewels and wisdoms and gems that were left by others for us. So again, emails mcole252@aol.com. Email me and let me know if you want to if you are interested in doing something of that nature. Now, back to Coulomb's law. Now, Coulomb's law was, again, like I said, it's a law that describes, right, the magnitude, the strength of the interactive force that exists between two objects, charged objects. Now, this law was found by Charles Augustin de Coulomb back in the late 18th century, 1780, 1770, somewhere around there. Right, late 18th century. And uh, Coulomb was a French physicist, among other things, scientist, engineer, etc. And what he found was what we today we use this in a practical sense with magnets, right? We know that like signs repel, right? So if you have a positive and a positive, there's a repulsive force, uh, and opposites attract. So if you have a positive and a negative, there's an attractive force. So these two forces, the repulsive force and the attractive force, independently of the objects, is what he sought to measure. So there's a way, Coulomb's law is a formula where you can measure the magnitude of the force, not the charge itself, neither the object, but rather just independently the force. How to measure the force, the magnitude of that force that exists between two charged particles. Now, what I like to do is when I study science, I like to supplement or substitute the word objects with people, right? So when you look at it from a scientific perspective and keeping it strictly scientific, they'll use terms like particles, objects, elements of nature, elements in the universe. And what I like to do is I like to try to make it more practical, put it in a practical sense. How can I use it for myself? How can you use it for yourself? So what I do is I say, okay, it's the measurement of the force that exists between two people. You see what I'm saying? As opposed to two charged particles. And these laws can very much apply to us and can be very much implemented into the human dynamics because we human beings are charged objects. Like we're charged. I'm charged. You're charged. Why? Because we're bioelectrical. So we inherently have a natural reside in charge. We all have a reside in charge. So understanding these laws, understanding these physics, these metaphysics, these sciences, and then taking that understanding, taking that comprehension, and converting it to the application of human to human interaction, what we can learn is what first and foremost, what is your predominant charge, right? Personalizing it. Like, what is your charge? This is the interesting thing because the force, the strength of the force is dependent upon the product of the charge. And what that means in simple terms is the product of the charge is the type of charge, right? So if one object type product charge is positive, that's the product of that charge. It's a positive charge. The other object is also a positive charge. So they both have the products of both charges are positive, which is a sign of a plus sign. Then we know there's going to be a repulsive force. Now, how strong is that repulsive force is what this law or this formula seeks to find out. And you can measure that. There's a way to measure and quantify the strength of that force, that repulsive force. If both objects or both people have the same sign, so if you have the same sign, a positive and a positive, there's going to be a repulsive force, and there's a way to measure that repulsive force. Now, the strength of that force, or the magnitude of that force, is dependent upon uh, I just stated the product of the charge, but also the intensity of that product of that charge. So meaning, how charged am I in that product? The product being the sign of my charge, right? And again, this is scientific terms, but if you carried over into people and how we use these laws amongst ourselves, it would be more, the jargon would change, right? So it would be more, what is my personality type? Instead of what is my charge, it would be what is my personality type? What is my natural state of being? What is my what is the essence of who I am? What is now the essence of who I am, the nature, my natural state, my nature, my characteristics, my features, my aggregate features are taken or substituting the word charge. Instead of using the word charge, which is for scientific, it's a scientific jargon, you use terms that are applicable to human interaction. So what is my natural mode or my natural mood? What is my natural mood? Every day, all day, this is the natural mood I am in. Even when I'm sleeping, when I'm up, I mean, we all fluctuate, right? But there's a natural resonance, a natural state that we're all in. That would be your charge. And once you find out your charge, right? And if you have the scientific mind and you can understand these laws, if you learn what is your charge, you'll be able to identify another person's charge. Because you can't identify people's charge. And I'm using a jargon charge scientifically, but I just explain what charge means if we use it in terms of human interaction. If you cannot identify another person's charge until you first identify your own. So if you know your charge, your state, your characteristics, your natural essence, if you know yours, then you will be able to use that same technique and skill, that the skill set that you have used to identify your own charge, your own state of being, you'll be able to identify it in others. Now, here's the magic. Once you can identify the charge of another person's and you know your own charge, with a little bit of guesswork, a little bit of rationalizing, you can determine the force that you're going to create with that person. That's the beauty of understanding Coulomb's law and being able to apply it into the human field. You will be able to determine with an almost certainty the interactive force you're going to create with anyone you meet. Any other human being that you interact with, if you walk around with this consciousness, now let's be honest, 9 out of 10 people you meet, if not 10 out of 10, are not walking around with Coulomb's law in their mind, right? No one is walking around with this consciousness. Let's just say no one, right? It's because the odds are so against meeting someone with this consciousness. The odds are so against it. It's safe to say no one. We know people are, but it's safe to say no one because the odds are so great. Now, if you do walk around with this state of consciousness, this awareness, you can almost, like I say, guess with a certain certainty of the force you are going to create with just standing next to someone. That's how powerful this law is. Because the force is called an electrostatic force. An electrostatic force means a force that is motionless. Electrostatic. It means stationary energy, energy not in motion. So if you just meet someone, and when I say meet, I mean just you're in their presence. You don't meet them in terms of interacting with them verbally, but you interact with them in a because this force is it's called a non-contact force, meaning you don't have to come into contact with the person in terms of proximity. You don't have to be very close to the person. Non-contact meaning I could just be in the room with the person, and that force is created instantly because the law states that the force is proportionate to the product of the charge and inversely proportionate to the distance squared between the objects. Now, I know that sounds a little confusing, but to keep it simple, it just means the nearer I am to you, the stronger the force is going to be. No, the closer. If the distance decrease between us, the strength of the force is going to increase. Right. If the distance between us is decreasing, the force is increasing. If the distance between us is increasing, the force is decreasing. And that's called the inverse proportionality of this law. Okay? So the force again is proportionate to the product of the charge, right? If the charge increase, the force increase. If the charge decrease, the force decrease. And then there's the inverse proportion to the radius, right? It's an inverse proportion to the distance squared, and the formula is F(E) Q1 Q2 divided by R squared, which is radius, which stands for separation or distance, same difference. But I say all that to say this though: if you meet people and you understand these scientific laws, and here's the thing for the doubters out there, the naysayers. Here's the thing. If you jump out of a window, you're guaranteed to fall. And I know I sound a little elementary saying that, right? This is very elementary, very premature. If you jump out of the window, you're going to fall. But I will keep it simple. To make a very potent point. The point is this: that the reason you fall out the window is because of a law. right? Newtonian physics, you study, you know, the law of gravity, right? It's a law why you fall out the window. It's a law, right? That law does not fluctuate. It does not alter, modify. There's no opinionating on that law. That's just a factual law, basic law. Well, that's how I say that to say Coulomb's law is the same thing. This stuff that we're discussing here is the same. It comes from out of the same scientific community, the same laws of physics, right? That every object that has energy creates a force, and it's either going to be repulsive or attractive. And if we can apply that to our lives and understand that every time you come in contact with someone, whether it's a direct contact, indirect contact, because again, it's a non-contact law, meaning we don't have to be touching for this law to apply. As long as we're in some proximity of each other, there is an interactive force that is being created without you and I even communicating verbally. Why? Because the very fact that we're charged objects or charged humans, we create what's called a field. Every object that is charged creates a field. That field is going to exert a pressure upon other fields. So the minute I come in a room with someone else, my field or their field, my field, their field, my field, it's mutual. There is going to be an exertion. My field is going to exert a certain impression upon that other person's field. That other person's field is going to exert a certain impression upon my field. This is physics. This is Coulomb's law. And the study into this field is what allowed them to come up with the quantifying, right? The magnitude, and it's called vector. It has vector. Yeah, it might this it's called a vector force because it has directionality and magnitude, right? So the directionality would be whether it's an attractive force, so this is the orientation, or it's a repulsive force, which is the orientation. So, and then the magnitude of that is what's measured with Coulomb's law and Coulomb's formula. So there's actually a scientific, a mathematical way to put a quantifying symbol, right? You quantify it, right? Okay, it's done with scientific notation, right? It's a very complex formula. We use scientific notation, division, and actually come out with a quantifier. You can quantify. You say this force is valued at this much, right? So you could tell, depending on, again, a variety of different elements and aspects and components, you can actually arrive at a number that quantifies the strength of the force, whether it's repulsive or attractive, it doesn't matter, but you can still determine that. And like I said, if you can have this consciousness, anyone you come in contact with, anyone. But first, this is the secret, right? You must first have a mastery of your own charge. And I explained what the term charge means outside of the scientific jargons. Watch this video again and you'll see. So if you can quantify, if you can identify your own charge when you're out into the universe, when you're out into the world, when you're out into the field, when you're out into life, business, social, personal, whatever, everyone you come in contact with, if you can use the same skill set you use to identify your own charge, you'll be able to identify theirs. Once you identify theirs, and again, having a firm grasp on your own charge, you will know based off their charge and your charge, the law of Coulomb's law, which is like repels and opposite attracts. So if you have a charge and you identify that someone else have the same charge you have, which would mean like charge, which would mean you guys have the same sign, a positive sign, two positive signs, or two negative signs, you can safely, by making, again, some guesswork and some rationalizing, you can almost sort of with a certain certainty know the kind of force you're going to have with that person. And you'll know that you and that person can't do any business together. You and that person can't be in the same room together. You and that person cannot be associates. You cannot be friends. You cannot be homeboys. You cannot be boyfriend and girlfriend. You cannot be girlfriend and boyfriend. You cannot have any kind of real lasting or constructive relationship with that person because of the force that you and that person create interactively and independently of you or that person. Again, the force is a non-contact force. It's an independent force that exists outside of you interact. I could be standing right next to you. Immediately, that force is already being manufactured, created, without me and you saying anything to each other. Again, think of the laws of gravity. It exists independent of you or I. You don't need, gravity does not need our input for it to operate and or function.